For many killers, ego is at the forefront of their actions, while greed, power, control, and a lack of empathy can also play large roles. Many criminals simply want to boast of their intelligence and wit. From eerie messages on bathroom stalls to red herrings meant to completely throw off an investigation, in today's episode, we'll be covering just a few things perpetrators have done while carrying out their crimes, as we explore the cases of 3 cold-blooded killers who left disturbing clues. But before we get into the first of these cases, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Rocket Money. For many, finances are tight this time of year and every penny helps, which means that those extra subscriptions that you signed up for a free trial of and then forgot to cancel are not really going to make the cut into 2024. We all want to start the new year with our healthiest finances, but some of those subscription services make it difficult to cancel on purpose, and some you don't even know you're paying for. I recently found out that I've been paying for Amazon Prime for over a year and never even used it. Well, Rocket Money is here to help. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel unwanted subscriptions, lower your bills, and manage your money better. In one place, you can build a custom budget, find better options for your bills, and grow your savings. We love to use Rocket Money to find and cancel unwanted subscriptions. They make it easy to identify recurring charges that you might have missed, and even cancel them from within the app. No need to call up and try to cancel through customer service. Rocket Money customers save on average $720 a year. So take advantage of the new year feeling and take control of your finances today. Go to rocketmoney.com/coldcasedetective and get started for free. Keith Hunter Jasperson. Better known as the Happy Face Killer, Keith Hunter Jasperson is a Canadian-American serial killer who took the lives of at least 8 women in the 1990s, though he has confessed to the murder of as many as 185 people. As a truck driver, Jasperson was seen driving all across the US, often targeting vulnerable women like sex workers and drug addicts. He would often pick them up, sexually assault them, kill them, and dump their bodies far from where they were last seen. Jasperson's first known murder occurred on January 21st, 1990, near Portland, Oregon, when he met 23-year-old Tanuja Bennett at a bar and invited her to his house. At some point during the night, the pair engaged in an argument and Jasperson beat and strangled the young woman to death. He later disposed of her body by placing her in his vehicle and driving her to the edge of town, dumping the remains down an embankment. He then rid himself of her possessions, a handbag and a Walkman, by tossing them into a river even further out of town. Over the next few months, Jasperson would take the lives of 3 more women, all of whom were raped and strangled. In August, he killed a still unidentified woman who may have used the name Claudia in Blythe, California. In September, he murdered Cynthia Lynn Rose in Turlock, California, and in November, he took the life of Lori Ann Pentland, an Oregon native. Jasperson continued to kill in 1993 and 1994. He murdered Patricia Skypel in June 1993 in Santa Nella, California. She had been unidentified until 2022, with Jasperson claiming she went by the name of Carla or Cindy. In 1994, another Jane Doe was found in Crestview, Florida. Her name was believed to be Suzanne, though she was not formally identified until 2023, when it was revealed she was Suzanne Kjellenberg. It wasn't until 1995 that Jasperson was arrested. On March 30th, he was apprehended for the slaying of Julie Winningham, his girlfriend, having been interviewed by investigators just 1 week before. It wasn't long before he confessed to the crime, Some reports claim he made 2 suicide attempts before handing himself in the hopes it would grant him some leniency when he was ultimately sentenced. In custody, Jasperson began revealing the details of the murders, something he appeared to revel in. Though he claimed to have killed many women, as many as 185, he recanted most of his confessions. Shortly before he was arrested, he wrote to his brother and admitted to 8 murders he would later be charged with. This prompted law enforcement in several states to reinvestigate cold cases, which they suspected may be linked to Jasperson. It was soon discovered that Jasperson had been rather boastful about his criminal career, even before he was caught. Ever since he'd slain Tanuja Bennett, he had been leaving cryptic messages claiming to be involved in the murders. In one instance, on a bathroom wall at a Greyhound bus terminal in Montana, he wrote, quote, "I beat her to death, raped her, and loved it. Yes, I'm sick, but I enjoy myself too." Chillingly, he added a happy face at the end of the message. The strange writings, however, didn't catch the attention of the police or the media in the way that Jasperson had hoped they would, and so he began sending confessions to newspapers and police departments across the country. He always signed his letters with a happy face, which led to him being dubbed the Happy Face Killer. Jasperson was found guilty of murdering 8 women and was subsequently given 4 consecutive life sentences without parole. He is currently 68 years old and incarcerated at the Oregon State Penitentiary. Stephen Cook Jr., Alex Bennett, and Grant Lewis. Heidi Louise Bernard Sikowski met Stephen Cook Jr. shortly after graduating high school in the early 1990s. One night, while out playing pool, the two bumped into one another, and a whirlwind romance ensued shortly thereafter. Just months after they began dating, they moved in together, taking up residence in Dundalk, Maryland. In early 2000, Heidi, now 24, was working part-time as a receptionist for an insurance company. Cook, meanwhile, was a part-time employee at Lowe's plumbing department. On April 20th, however, the lives of Heidi and her boyfriend changed forever when Cook came home from work to find the 24-year-old dead. Promptly upon finding her body, he called emergency services. The first officers on the scene discovered Cook lying on the floor, crying, with Heidi in his arms. Later reports showed that the young woman had been strangled to death, and her throat had been slashed. An investigation into Heidi's death was soon launched, but detectives were surprised by the crime scene, which seemed to make no sense. One now retired police sergeant, Alan Mayer, recalled that the living room contained no furniture, and that throughout the house, drawers had been pulled open, as if to give the illusion that the home had been ransacked, when in reality, nothing was missing. He added, even though the jewelry box was open, all the jewelry was still there. There were no signs of forced entry, and the home alarm had been deactivated. However, according to investigators, the strangest clue of all was something that had been written on a wall above Heidi's head. Number 1 was written on the wall in lipstick, as if to imply that there was a serial killer on the loose who planned to take the lives of many more victims. Upon speaking with Heidi's boyfriend, investigators found that Cook had picked Heidi up from her workplace at around 5 o'clock on the afternoon of April 20th. They arrived home at around 5:30, but Heidi needed to use the toilet, and Cook had a lengthy list of errands he needed to run, so he decided to head out without her. According to one detective on the case, Cook, quote, got his oil changed, got his hair cut, went to Home Depot, fixed his sister's plumbing, went through the tunnel, and then came back home. Everywhere Cook went, he either got a receipt for going, or the place where he went had video. Cook offered up leads to investigators, claiming that in the weeks leading up to Heidi's murder, a stranger came to the door and spoke of forming a neighborhood watch program. This unnerved the 24-year-old, who was home alone and didn't recognize the man. She described him to Cook, who passed the description on to police. He also noted that there were alleged scratch marks around the back door lock, as if someone had attempted to tamper with the basement lock the day before the murder. This led to the police arresting a local butcher who worked with Cook's sister, but he was released shortly afterwards. Cook also talked up his relationship with Heidi to authorities. He claimed that they were in a great place and that they planned to marry in Las Vegas. but wary detectives soon found a possible motive for the crime: insurance policies. Cook's was worth $900,000, Heidi's was worth $700,000. Though law enforcement found this suspicious, they had no physical evidence linking Cook to Heidi's death, and eventually the case grew cold. 11 years passed before Heidi's case was reopened. By this time, Cook had gotten married, had a child, and was working for the government in Veterans Affairs. At the time of the original investigation, nail clippings had been taken from Heidi. The results back then showed that her fingernails had male DNA beneath them, and in 2011, the DNA sample was run through the national database and came back with a match: Alexander Bennett. Bennett had lived in Baltimore for about a month around the time of the killing. When confronted by investigators, he denied being involved. He claimed that his friend, a man named Grant Lewis, could vouch for him. When Lewis was tracked down, however, he quickly confessed that Bennett had admitted to murdering someone in Baltimore after getting drunk one night. Shortly after this confession, Bennett was arrested and deported to Baltimore. He later arranged a plea deal with the prosecution. It was soon revealed that Lewis and Bennett were seeking to raise money to open up their own nightclub. To try and gather funds, they decided to scam people online by posing as hitmen. According to Lewis, however, Bennett decided to kill for real when Stephen Cook Jr. promised him $60,000 if he killed his girlfriend. Bennett told the court that he took the 24-year-old's life and then tried to clean any evidence from the scene and staged it to make it look like a robbery. He also claimed that he slashed her neck to make sure she was dead and admitted that he'd written "number 1" on the wall to throw off investigators. At this time, the prosecution had only circumstantial evidence against Cook. The police had never searched his computer, which he'd used to communicate with Lewis and Bennett. While in prison awaiting trial, Cook further implicated himself when he attempted to hire a fellow inmate to intimidate or kill Lewis. While Cook denied being involved in Heidi's death at his 2015 trial, a jury found him guilty. He was convicted of first-degree murder, witness intimidation, and attempted murder, and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, plus another 30 years. Bennett and Lewis were given life in prison after being convicted of first-degree murder. The judge called the case one of the most cold-blooded, heartless, manipulative, despicable crimes he had ever seen. Cook is currently 52 years old and is still in prison. He has maintained his innocence since his conviction and has attempted to appeal it fruitlessly on several occasions. Heriberto Seda. Born July 31st, 1967, in New York City, Heriberto Seda would grow up to become one of NYC's most prolific and terrifying serial killers. Responsible for the deaths of 3 people and the injury of 5 others, he became known as the New York Zodiac Killer for the series of strange and cryptic letters he wrote to the police while he was active. Between March 8, 1990 and October 2, 1993, Seda attacked people at random throughout New York City, operating in 21-day cycles. He called himself the Zodiac and would later admit to being an admirer of the Zodiac Killer from the 1960s, and lived up to his name by penning letters filled with riddles and ciphers, which he used to taunt the police and the media. On May 31st, 1990, when police responded to the shooting of an elderly man, they discovered a letter left behind by the New York Zodiac. The commanding officer on the scene, Detective Michael Caravolo, stated, "This note was there, this cryptic, eerie note. At the top is a circle with 3 symbols. The note, in part, read, 'This is the Zodiac. The 12 sign will die when the belts in the heaven are seen.'" Investigators sent the note to be examined by the San Francisco police, who dealt with the original Zodiac. At the time, law enforcement had no idea what or who they were dealing with. By this point, the original Zodiac Killer had been dormant for years. Had he returned, or was this merely an imitation of the 1960s killer? There were no clues on the letter, no fingerprints or trace evidence, and there was nothing left behind at the crime scene. The culprit had used a makeshift and untraceable zip gun. 18 days after the shooting, investigators recovered another note. It had been mailed to a reporter with the New York Post, who had handed it over to the police. The handwriting matched the initial letter, and the writer claimed again to be the Zodiac. They also noted that no grooves would be found on the bullet. This reinforced the legitimacy of the letters, as investigators knew that only the real shooter would have this information. Soon, authorities realized the shooting of the elderly man was actually the third carried out by this perpetrator. Mario Orozco had been shot on March 8th, and German Montenegro had been shot on March 29th. The victims of the first two attacks survived, but the elderly man, Joseph Pross, died weeks later in hospital. Detective Michael Caravolo recalled, "We then realize his drawings on the pie slice coincide with the three correct astrological signs of the first three victims: Orozco, Montenegro, Pross. He had the Taurus, he had the Scorpio, he had the Gemini. He was 3 for 3. The new note was examined for fingerprints, but turned up nothing. Meanwhile, investigators in San Francisco informed the NYPD that they were dealing with a copycat. The handwriting and the contents of the newer letters didn't match up with that of the ones from 2 decades earlier. Investigators knew they needed to think outside the box, and began exploring the occult and astrology. They soon understood that the killer operated in 21-day cycles, and that on March 8th and March 29th, there had been specific constellations visible in the sky. Shortly afterwards, they discovered that June 21st would likely be the next time that the attacker struck, as 3 constellations would be visible again. Though a team was put together to keep an eye out for the New York Zodiac in Brooklyn and Queens, the areas of the city where he had previously struck, July 21st came and went without incident until a call came in from officers at Central Park, who reported a shooting. Larry Parham, a cancer sign, was shot but survived the ordeal. Afterwards, a task force was formed, but the Zodiac went silent and the force was dissolved. In 1994, completely out of the blue, the perpetrator sent a letter to a newspaper, taking responsibility for the attacks on several individuals. Patricia Fonte, who died after being shot twice and stabbed over 100 times on August 10, 1992. Jim Weber, who was attacked on June 4, 1993, but survived. John Diacone, who was shot and killed on July 20, 1993, and Diane Ballard, who survived a gunshot wound to the neck on October 2, 1993. The Zodiac also referred to a 5th victim, attacked on June 11, 1994, but they have never been located. While handwriting and the victim information indicated the letter writer was the same person from 1990, investigators were surprised that the contents of the letter were different. Gone were the pie signs with the Zodiac symbols. They had been replaced with hand-drawn flags and other ciphers, which were soon broken down with the help of a veteran of World War II cryptography and signals intelligence. The code was revealed to read, "This is the Zodiac speaking. I am in control. There will be more. Yours truly." A second task force was put together, and a partial print was pulled from an older Zodiac letter. Despite testing it against 4,500 people, no matches were made. Shortly afterwards, the task force was disbanded once more. Then in June 1996, the identity of the New York Zodiac came to light when Detective Joseph Herbert, who'd been a task force supervisor, responded to a standoff situation. A man named Eddie had shot his half-sister and was now engaging in a standoff with the police, but Herbert successfully talked him down. However, he felt a chill run down his spine when he was handed Eddie's written statement about the events from earlier that day. He recalled, "I actually had a physical reaction. My blood pressure went down like 40-50 points. I knew it was the handwriting from all the letters I studied for the last 2 years, working on the Zodiac case." Heriberto Eddie Sader was an unemployed 26-year-old high school dropout from Brooklyn. He had reportedly been a good student until he was expelled for bringing a gun to school and refusing to attend mandatory counseling sessions which would allow him to return. Though he didn't have a job, he supported his mother and sister by stealing from payphones and vending machines. Seda was reportedly obsessed with good and evil and enjoyed discussing the Bible, but was known to be mentally and physically abusive to his half-sister Gladys, who was a teenager at the time. During the standoff situation, Seda had pulled out a gun and begun threatening Gladys and her boyfriend. While the latter hid in the bedroom, Gladys attempted to flee out the front door. Seda shot her in the buttocks, but she was able to reach the next-door neighbor's house, where she called the police. Seda initially denied being the New York Zodiac, but soon confessed. He was sentenced to life for killing 3 people and attempting to kill 5 more. Evidence used to convict him included handwriting analysis, fingerprints, tool mark evidence, and DNA, which was discovered on one of the stamps he used to mail a letter to investigators. Seda will not be eligible for parole until he turns 264. In 2004, he told New York Magazine that he didn't actually know anything about astrology, and claimed that his body count would have been higher if he'd used a stronger gun. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and reactions, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.